Most people know what a will is through family or pop culture, or maybe your parents threaten to leave you out of it at some point. Wills and trust, will and trust. We should be will and trust. Type in willandtrust.com and this Minnesota attorney pops up and it just forwards to his law firm webpage. His name is Bob. Oh, we have to call him. There's no inquiry or live chat support. It's picked up the phone, called this law firm. Assistant answered the phone and said, hey, we're a startup out of San Diego. We noticed that you guys use the domain, but it actually just forwards to this law firm website. I think we're playing dumb college kids. Can we use this for a school project? It would mean a lot to us.
People love pitching school project.
Yeah, it's a school project. It would mean a lot to us. Or, we have a little bit of cash hung up on us. Is that how they treat their clients? But it was this iconic website that looked out of the early 2000s. The guy had a lion tie, Daniel and our other co-founder, Brian, and I, the three of us vividly talk about it. Oh, Bob with the lion tie. Wait, revelation. What if we reversed it? Trust and will. And go on GoDaddy, trustandwill.com, available. And I'm oh my gosh. It was $2,000.
But are you still master of your domain?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Master of Your Domain. I am honored to have Cody Barbo with us today, founder and CEO of Trust and Will. Actually, before we get into it, Cody, and start nerding out on domain names, you want to talk a little bit about Trust and Will and what you guys do?
I would love to. Rob, thank you for having me on. So Cody, co-founder and CEO of Trust and Will. We're an online estate planning platform. So think of us like TurboTax for estate plans. Families come to our website and in about 30 to 45 minutes have a complete estate plan. So it's questions about your family, your assets, how do you want your assets divided, healthcare decisions, all the way down to burial, cremation, what songs do you want played at your celebration of life. We try to make it as approachable as we can in an online experience versus going and doing this through an attorney and spending thousands of dollars, weeks of your time. And we've had, as of this month, we've had over 1 million people register with us in all 50 states, which is really cool. Very, very.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, and maybe for another time, maybe for this conversation, but I'm always curious, what happens to people's digital assets when they pass away?
Oh yeah, we had in our very first pitch deck, we had a digital will concept. It was this is when crypto was total rocket ship in 2017. It was the Wild West, and we're oh, it's a will for your crypto and your social media, but a lot of the big tech, they have a legacy contact feature. You've probably seen this with Facebook or Gmail. So a lot of them are solving for it, which is great. It makes it easier for us. But yeah, that one's more fun over drinks.
Yeah. What are you gonna do with your apes? You gotta have a plan. Awesome. Well, thanks for that intro, and have known you for a while. We've nerded out on domain names and sports and other stuff before, but I know prior to Trust and Will, you had another company that was called Industry. I think there's some domain stories on that too, but that was a professional network for service providers, right, in hospitality. And I know you're involved with San Diego State University boards and a bunch of others. So thank you for coming on and agreeing to nerd out with me today.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Well, I wanted to have you on and talk a little bit more. I know how important digital assets for you as you're building companies in your brand, as you think about social and domains, et cetera. And thought it'd be cool to just jam a little bit about, we can start with Trust and Will and how you guys kind of thought about the name, the branding, and the assets are available.
Yeah. So trustandwill.com, obviously the domain today, but literally August 2017, 7 years ago to the month, Daniel and I were at my apartment complex clubhouse, and we'd had coffee, which is kind of what sparked this conversation. It was for him around digital assets. For me, I was getting married. So I was just kind of thinking through this with my wife, what do we do? How do you get started on this path? And I was also, why is LegalZoom the only reputable company that does this? Because nothing in their name suggests that they do estate planning. Most people go to them for LLCs, not estate planning. It's a very kind of tertiary thing they offer. And we're oh, someone has got to be venture backed, kind of fintechy, consumer fintech doing this well. No one was. And we started looking at the data, and half the country doesn't even have an estate plan. So there's an awareness gap, an education gap, and the hardest thing to get people to do is to do this. It's just procrastination really is the biggest barrier. So I was okay, so if we want to aspire to be a Credit Karma or a TurboTax, we have to build a brand. So what's our name going to be? And we started looking up all the words and the estate planning dictionary, and a word that stood out to us just because it has an emotional context and different meanings to different people's legacy. We're oh, legacy is such a great word because you can ask somebody what they want their legacy to be, or how do you think of someone's legacy, and just get a multitude of answers. So legacy.com is taken. It's the largest obituary website. And as soon as we saw that, we're like, okay, we can't call it legacy, but I was like, this is a good first attempt. And I was like, well, what is estate planning? Most people don't know what estate planning is. So Dana and I are like, well, it's wills and trusts and some healthcare documents. But I think most people know what a will is through family or pop culture. Maybe your parents threatened to leave you out of it at some point, or you lost somebody.
Sounds like a whole other story there, but
yeah, oh yeah, and we were like, oh, like wills and trust, will and trust. We should be will and trust. So that naturally we like go on to type in willandtrust.com, and this Minnesota attorney pops up, and it just forwards to his like law firm webpage. His name is Bob. He's since retired, as we know. And I was like, oh, we have to like call him. Like, there's no inquiry or like live chat support. So like, picked up the phone, called this law firm. Assistant answered the phone and said, hey, we're a startup out of San Diego that's looking to do estate planning. We noticed that you guys use the domain, but it actually just forwards to this law firm website. Is this something that we could, I think we're playing like dumb college kids. We're like, could we use this for like a school project? It would mean a lot to us.
People love pitching school projects.
Yeah, it's a school project. Like, it would mean a lot to us, or, we have a little bit of cash. And she, like, I vividly remember this, like, hung up on us. And I was like, oh, that was not friendly. Is that how they treat their clients? But it was like this iconic website that looked out of the early 2000s. The guy had like a lion tie. Like, Daniel and our other co-founder, Brian, and I, the three of us vividly talk about this. Like, oh, Bob with the lion tie. And because we got hung up on, we're like, probably not going to chase that lead much further. So we're like, wait, revelation. What if we reversed it? Trust and will. And like, go on GoDaddy, trustandwill.com, available. And I'm like, oh my gosh. It was like $2,000. And I didn't have $2,000. I was like, I'll call my dad. Maybe he'll like front us the money. And then I'll go and get. No, my dad loves it. He had to think about it. He's like, let me think about it. But we ended up going on all the digital channels, mostly Twitter, Instagram, I think YouTube at the time, Snapchat. Trust and Will was available on all of those. I was like, this is crazy. I have one other story that I actually have never shared publicly that we also considered, and I'm going to caution anybody who watches or listens to this, don't go to this website. I haven't searched it in a long time.
Everyone's going to immediately go to this website, but go on.
I know. Well, hopefully it's blocked or something now. Okay, so the other like term a lot of younger people here have heard the last 10 years is like adulting. Like, oh, I got to file my taxes, adulting. I got to do insurance, or like go get car insurance, get an oil change, adulting. That was like a thing for a while on social media. So being pretty crafty, I acquired the Instagram and Twitter handle for adulting, inherited it. I'll use a word. I don't want to get in trouble by Meta and X, but like we found a way to these digital handles, which was great. Adulting.com, I actually thought was a great, I was like, oh, it should just be adulting. And we maybe tack on like tax and insurance. Don't go to adulting.com, listeners. I don't know what the website is today. It was not an appropriate website. I immediately was embarrassed because I like pulled it up in like a co-working space. I was like, oh, shut the laptop.
Yeah, you're on an airplane next to a child. No, it's interesting, right? Like the combination of getting the domain and the social handles, like even 7 years ago was complicated, but especially now, like so difficult to try and lock up everything across the brand. I'm actually working with someone right now where like that's a requirement, is like they want the domain and everything. It's like, it's tough. It's tough to navigate. How important do you think that is, just in terms of trust and will and reputation, to like have that as a nice cohesive kind of package?
Yeah, it matters a lot. And like consistency. So we'll talk about my last startup that had a little bit of success, but like the consistency of the brand when you're a young company, the more consistent it is, the more trusted it feels, the more you start to see people pick up on it, like in more than one place. And I've just seen so many, you can be successful with different handles and a different domain. It's just harder to do it. Our default, if you're 30 plus, your default is website companyname.com. Like that's just the default, not co.io or any of the other extensions. Your natural search on social is going to be the brand name. So if that shows up first, and if it's now it's the verification check mark. That's like the real flex, which costs money.
But, and I think it's especially true, and you guys are a great example, as you've grown, right? You move further up the funnel, you do TV, you do podcasts, you do out of home, right? Like having consistency there where, yes, someone could direct type it into the URL and find you over search. But if they're on Instagram or they're on, X or whatever, showing up in the same way can be very just valuable and kind of plug a leaky bucket, if you will.
Oh yeah, and like today, I'm most proud today because I'm forever wearing our company swag. I'm out traveling, even I'm just walking my dog in the neighborhood, and people ask, "Well, what's Trust a Mill?" And they're like,
You're always, I feel like you're 100% of the time wearing swag, which I appreciate.
"Oh, thanks, yeah." Well, I was on a flight. I'll never forget this. I was on a flight to San Francisco for a VC pitch, and one of the co-founders of DoorDash, this is like literally a decade ago, was just wearing the DoorDash t-shirt. And I was like, "Oh, do you work at DoorDash?" He's like, "Yeah." And he didn't say he started the company. I loved it. It was like the greatest moment. He's like, "Yeah, I work there." And I was like, "Oh, what do you do?" And then he said, "I started the company." And I was like, "Whoa." And why? I was like, "Why are you wearing the t-shirt?" He's like, "Likelihood of most people on this plane knowing who DoorDash is like zero." He's like, "You're a tech guy," assuming, because I had my last company's t-shirt on. I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "I got a startup." He's like, "Going to VC pitch?" I go, "Yeah." He's like, "That doesn't end." He's like, "It's forever. That's like until you're a large public company, like people need to know who you are." And I just it stood out to me in a way that I've just always remembered, and I want to be an advocate.
Yeah. And it's free. So the added benefit of free clothing, I would enjoy.
Yeah, perks of being a 6'4" height, but like I'll talk to anybody, whether my wife likes that or not. I'll talk to any person about anything, but generally it'll draw back to the business, and it's worked. It's paid off when I travel on flights. People see the logo, they've seen the commercial, or they've used the product. It's awesome.
No, love it. Love it. I know we were chatting a little bit before, but it sounds like you've got some interesting tidbits about industry, your previous company, even your one before that as a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah, so the first startup is the quick one, and we'll get back to industry. My first startup was called Niche, or Niche, however you care to pronounce it, NICHE, and we were trying to build like basically what like Snapchat and Instagram Stories has evolved into. Like we kind of focused on more of like the ephemeral messaging with limited content time to view it within a geofenced location. So like something that frustrated my co-founder and I is like, you could take a selfie on the couch at home and hashtag Coachella is like a long time. It was like 2011. You could hashtag Coachella and it would show up in the hashtag feed when you're really just trying to find photos. I don't even think video was on Instagram at the time. So the idea was that you plus your phone would like be the key to unlock the content. So if you actually went to Coachella, now you could post content about Coachella. And then if you were, kind of getting FOMO, you wanted, oh, what's going on at Coachella? You're not seeing a bunch of random crap. You're actually seeing just photos and videos at Coachella. And that's basically if you like go into the Instagram location feature now, you can tap it and see photos from the last 24 hours. That's basically what we inspired to build. This is such a long time ago. It's escaping my memory. But we called the company Niche because they're like, find your niche. Like everybody has their niche, whether it's like your favorite bar, like your buddy's house. So we were, early 20s, your favorite music festival, blah, blah, blah. And you could have different niches for different places and people in your life. And we had niche with us.com, I think was the domain. And we're trying to get niche. And it was like this like SF VC backed startup. And like we had a little bit of like buzz in San Diego, but nothing substantial. We did like a TechCrunch pitch that we won. We didn't raise any capital. But when Niche, the tech SF company, got acquired, whatever, like 2 years in, I had like a ton of people congratulating us on LinkedIn and emailing me and hey, congrats on the acquisition. I'm like, that's not us. That's not us.
Waiting for the wires to hit.
Yeah. I was like, that was the first time I was like, wow, the power of like your brand and your digital assets matters. So that carried with me into the second business industry. This is like 2013, 2014, where we were trying to build a LinkedIn for hospitality. I'd seen a couple other companies do this for medical professionals, for the military, and they'd raised a lot of capital. There's a company called Doximity. I talked to the founder, Jeff, and they're like Series A. They're now a public company. And he's like, makes complete sense. He's like, my first job was a restaurant. He's like, you should totally do this for front of house, back of house management, and just try to be the LinkedIn for hospitality because LinkedIn doesn't cater to blue collar as much. So we had raised a seed round. We had about 25 employees and we served 12 markets, mostly West Coast through Texas up to Chicago. And we had built a huge following on Instagram because we had at industry. And on Twitter, we got at industry. I have a story for each of those that I'll spare for another time. So we had the digital assets, but the domain, that's the point of this podcast, right? Is we were trying to get industry.com. We had joined the industry, which was fine. Jointheindustry.com is just too long. So before I knew who you were and that you existed, there's some random domain broker that I got introduced to down in like Panama, no joke. And I was like, at the time, I was like, this is the Rob of 2015 down in Panama, like off the grid. Yeah. And I talked to this guy. He's like, give me 2 weeks, I'll get back to you, because I couldn't find anything, which is unusual because you can find general information about a domain owner today. So he gets back to me 2 weeks later. He's like, impossible, impossible, impossible. And I'm like, how? I was like, there's got to be a price tag. And he's like, no, literally impossible. He's like, here's what happened. He's like, it was a UK domain. It was owned by a UK entity that was caught up in a massive fraud scheme, and the UK government owns it. He's like, it's unattainable. He's like, there's nobody to call, there's nobody to email. It is, I don't know if I haven't looked for that, if industry.com is even alive today, but like, you can't get it. And I just accepted that fate.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one. That's a tough one to break into if it's owned by the UK government and they're unwilling.
It was just like a blank screen. Is it loading for you?
And there's something there now, but who knows? Who knows what it is?
Yeah. So interesting. So we ended up getting like industry.co, which was good enough.
Yeah, that'll do. That'll do. No, that happens. Like, I actually haven't heard of that around the government before.
Yeah. So somebody got it because it's an in-use website. It looks like AI.
Probably a startup by someone within the UK government who, just had great access. Yeah. I mean, it sucks, but some of these names are just not gettable, which is like very frustrating for someone like you and I. That's like, no, if I just try really hard and I spend a lot of time on it, I should be able to figure it out. And there's certain domain owners that are just ghosts. They're just like, they pop up every couple years and they'll take the 7-figure offers that are on the table and then go back to doing whatever they're doing. I'm ghost hunting right now for a few, but yeah, it can be painful when it's not gettable. And I've talked to folks that are like, have gone down that path and then have decided to rebrand the company because they're like, it's important to us to get this oneword.com. And if I can't get it, it's actually better over long term to switch brands.
That's some of my domain stories. Oh, and my personal name. I don't even think I ever shared this with you. So
I would love to. This is the perfect time to share.
First name, last name was easy. Nobody had that. And I don't think there are Cody Barbos, but Barbo's not a super common name, but Barbo.com was my dad's side of the family is from Spain. It was a Spanish shoe company. And like for 10 years, like I was like, they were just in business. So I was like, there's no way, impossible. And then it was on GoDaddy. I think before I met you, I was on GoDaddy. They have the domain broker service. It's like $70 or something. And I was like, they're like, yeah, it's for sale. And I'm like, hell yeah. And I'm almost embarrassed to admit this. I paid like 15 grand for it. I was like, it's for life. Like, it's for life. Like, I want this domain. I don't know if anything becomes of our family name, but like, I just want it. And I bought it, and there's that one. So Barbo.com.
No, I'm a huge fan of if you can get lastname.com, because like first name, last name, those are all good. I'm sure you also have them for your kids, just like I do. But like last name, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, but like you can, speaking of legacy, right? It's like something you can actually pass on to your kids, or like your extended family can get value out of. But unfortunately for me, Schutz is also a big shoe brand and also a rather large German energy conglomerate. So we're still working on it, though.
Working on it, in progress.
Cool, man. Cody, thank you for joining. I really appreciate your time, sharing your stories. And I feel like we're going to continue to jam on domain stuff well into the future. So more stories to be told.
Thanks for having me.